The load came down wrong and a man on the ground went down with it, and before the dust had even settled, the whole site was looking up at my cab. At me. Like they already knew whose fault it was. I was 40 feet up in the seat of a crawler crane with my hands still on the levers, and a rigger I'd worked next to for 2 years was on the ground holding his leg, and every face on that site had already decided the answer. The operator did it. The operator always did it. My hands were on the sticks, so it was my hands that hurt him. I ran cranes for 20 years. 20 years, NCCCO certified, not one dropped load, not one incident, not one pick I ever made that I couldn't stand behind. I was the operator they called when the pick was tight, close radius, heavy steel, no room for error, because I read a load chart like scripture and I did not let anybody rush me off of it. Careful. That was the whole thing I sold. Careful was the only thing I ever sold. And in the time it took a load to come down, I was the reckless one. I want to tell you about the man who put me there. His name was Boyd, and he was the lift supervisor on that job. Boyd ran the schedule. And that steel was behind, and the crane we had was rated for the picks on the plan, but not much past them, and the pick that hurt that rigger was past them. It was over the chart for that radius. I knew it when they rigged it, and I said so, and I stopped. Because that's what the crane told me to do. There's a system on a modern crane, a load moment indicator, an LMI, and when a pick is too heavy for the boom length and the radius you're at, it alarms and it cuts you off. It stops you. Mine alarmed. I set the load back down and I said on the radio that we were over the chart and I wasn't making that pick the way it was rigged. And Boyd got on the radio and told me the numbers were fine, the schedule couldn't take it, and he authorized the override. He keyed it through as the supervisor. And I want to be honest with you, because I've had a lot of nights to be honest with myself about it. I made the pick. I trusted the man whose job it was to know, and I booming out to a safer radius when the rigging let go and the load came down and a man got hurt. And the second it went bad, Boyd's story changed. He didn't tell them he'd forced an overweight pick and skipped the rig inspection to save a day. He told the company, and then he told OSHA, that the operator made an unsafe lift and overrode the crane safety system. He pointed up at the cab. At me. Here is what that costs an operator. It is not just the job. That certification, the NCCCO card in my wallet, is the thing that lets me sit in that seat at all. A finding that I overrode the safety system and dropped a load on a man ends that card. And when your card is gone, you don't run a crane for anybody, anywhere, ever again. 20 years, and the only work I know is at the top of a boom. And with a man hurt on the ground, the company's lawyers were already saying negligence, and negligence with an injury is how an operator ends up in front of a lot more than a safety review. I drove home that night a 45-year-old woman who'd been told she might never run a crane again and might be prosecuted for a pick she'd been ordered to make. My kid asked me why I was quiet. I told him a man got hurt at work and somebody said it was my fault and that I was going to prove whose fault it really was. I said it out loud, so I'd have to do it. The young rigger who got hurt, he'd heard Boyd force the override same as I did. But he was shaken and he was scared and Boyd was already shaping what the crew remembered, and I wasn't going to hang a hurt man's word against a supervisor's as my whole defense. This wasn't going to get fixed by whose story sounded better. It was going to get fixed by the one thing on that site that logged every pound and every override and couldn't be leaned on or scared quiet. Because here is what Boyd forgot, the way these people always forget the one thing. That crane writes down everything. The load moment indicator isn't just an alarm, it's a black box. It logs the actual weight on the hook, the boom length, the radius, the boom angle, every alarm it throws, and every single override, all of it stamped to the second. It doesn't care about the schedule, and it doesn't care that Boyd is the supervisor. It just records what happened and who made it happen. So through the OSHA investigation, and with me pushing for my own records, we pulled the LMI data off that crane. And we pulled the lift plan and the inspection sign-offs. And we put it all on one timeline. The LMI had recorded the real weight of that load, over the rated capacity for the radius we were at, exactly like I'd called. It had recorded the safety cutoff alarming. It had recorded me setting the load down and stopping. And then it had recorded the override, keyed through on Boyd's supervisor authorization, his code, his timestamp, 40 seconds after I stopped. The rigging inspection sign-off for that pick was blank. Waved off. And my control inputs showed me booming to a shorter, safer radius at the moment the load let go, doing the one thing a careful operator does when they're stuck making a pick they don't like. The machine had watched the whole thing. And the machine said I stopped, and the supervisor made it go. They held the OSHA review in a trailer on site. The company's safety director was there. The OSHA investigator was there. Boyd was there, in a clean hard hat, still sure that a supervisor's word beats an operator's, the way it usually does. My rep put the LMI timeline up on the screen, and we didn't argue. We walked it. The overweight reading. The alarm. My stop. And then the override, keyed under Boyd's authorization, 40 seconds later, with the inspection never signed. The OSHA investigator asked Boyd one question. He asked him whose authorization had overridden the crane's safety cutoff on that pick. Boyd didn't have an answer because the answer was on the screen in his own code. The rigger, watching the black box back him up, said out loud that Boyd ordered the pick to go. And I watched it land on Boyd in front of the safety director and the federal man. The moment he understood that the crane had been keeping its own record the whole time, and the crane doesn't feel schedule pressure and doesn't care who's in charge. They cleared me completely. My certification was never really in danger once the LMI data was in front of OSHA. The black box had me stopping and the supervisor overriding. I got my job back and the back pay and a finding on the record that the operator acted correctly and the lift was forced past the load chart by the supervisor. The company changed the rule. A supervisor can't verbally override an LMI cutoff anymore, and no pick moves without a logged, signed rigging inspection from 2 people. The hurt rigger was taken care of, and nobody ever tried to pin it on him. And Boyd was fired, referred to OSHA for a willful violation, and reported for forcing an unsafe lift, the same certification pulling machine he tried to feed me into. I still run cranes. Still take the tight picks nobody else wants, still read the chart like scripture, still set a load back down the second the numbers aren't right, no matter who's on the radio. And sometimes, up in the seat with a heavy piece of steel hanging still and true under my hook, I think about how the whole time they were calling me reckless, the thing that was going to save me was sitting right there in the cab with me, quiet, writing down every pound. I built 20 years on being careful. It turned out the crane had been keeping count of careful the whole time.